Okay, so we've looked at simplifying fractions, we've looked at kind of adding and subtracting those fractions here in terms of expressions. What I now want to look at is how would I solve equations with fractions? So obviously these are going to be questions where the overall fraction expression is equal to something. It could be another fraction expression, it could be a number, just depends on the question here. But the key difference, I suppose, is that having that equality allows us to take advantage of kind of multiplication here, okay, of a way to eliminate the fractions ultimately. So we have two different methods we can take for these questions. The first is a direct follow on from the previous video on that idea of simplifying our fractions. And in that kind of method, what we're going to do is we're going to simplify any fractions that we have. That could be fractions on one side, that could be fractions on both sides. We're going to simplify those fractions as best we can, and what we'll do then is we will eliminate the fraction ultimately. Okay, so we're rewriting, if we follow the steps here, we're rewriting the fractions in terms of the lowest common denominator. We're simplifying into one fraction on either side. Okay, so generally I suppose that's what I would see as the easiest method, is maybe to bring the fractions together, simplify as one fraction, multiply both sides by that common denominator to eliminate the fraction, and then solve the equation that we're left with. I am going to kind of fly through the actual combining or simplifying of the fraction, because I suppose that's coming directly from the previous video. So our first step, as always, is to find the lowest common denominator, which in this case would be 10. Our next step is to rewrite my two fractions with that lowest common denominator, making sure that we adjust the numerator of our fraction similarly as well. So in this case, that means multiplying the top of my fraction by 5. For my other fraction, or excuse me, not by 5, by 2. Thinking ahead. So multiplying here by 2. For my other fraction, again, I want my denominator to be 10, but that means multiplying the top of this fraction by 5. Things giving out of me here. Okay, so multiplying here by 5. Okay, very important, I suppose, that we're kind of fluent in combining our fractions here, and all of this, I suppose, coming from the previous video if you're unsure. I'm going to keep that 6 as is. I'm not going to touch that. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to combine my fractions into 1. I'm not going to multiply out my brackets yet until I have them combined into one fraction. Keeping that 6 again, I'm going to multiply them out here, 4x minus 2, 5x plus 35. Again, all over 10. Let's reduce this down, 9x minus, or plus, excuse me, 33, all over 10, and equal to 6. Okay, so moving onwards now. We're going to multiply both sides by 10. And the reason we're doing this is, if I multiply this side by 10, what's going to happen here, and I'm multiplying the whole fraction, if I'm multiplying this side by 10, what's going to happen is I have an expression that is multiplied by 10 and divided by 10. The reason multiplication is so good against fractions, okay, as a kind of removal of fractions, if you like, is that fractions are essentially division, okay, are very closely related to division as an operation. So multiplication then acts as an inverse operation, and we should know, I suppose, that inverse operations then are a good tool to kind of remove each other. So we've seen that before in algebra, where if we wanted to remove a term from one side of an expression, if it was a positive term, we would subtract. If it was a negative term, we would add, and we kind of use those opposite operations there. So the goal here, I suppose, being that elimination of the 10, the denominator of my fraction. Easy enough done. On the other side, left with 60. Okay, 9x here, take away that, gives me 27, which means that x ultimately, by dividing by 9, x ends up being 3. Okay, we could of course check this by substituting that 3 back in for x in the entire equation and kind of working out our answer in that way. Okay, but very important there, I suppose, across the board to just be consistent with your work, and to kind of follow that same method that we kind of introduced in the previous video. So what we'll do is we'll look at another question maybe using that method, and then I'm going to look at the alternative method that we could take. So let's find a question that looks interesting. We could look at this one. No, let me see. Let's look at this one here. Okay, let's look at this one here. So solve the following equation. We're going to do it by creating a common denominator, reducing our fractions in that way. I'm primarily just going to look at the left-hand side here. I want to make that fraction into one fraction. I'm going to leave the half for the moment. I'm not going to worry about it yet. So we're going to combine these fractions. Common denominator for 3 and 2 is going to be 6. I'm going to rewrite my fractions so that they have a denominator of 6, making sure that I adjust them accordingly. The first one originally had a 3, it would have been multiplied by 2, so I multiply by 2 on the top. The second fraction needs to be multiplied by 3. And we'll keep our minus a half here for now. Rewriting now as one fraction, still keeping the numerator. Okay, I'm not working that out until the end. Now I'm going to expand those brackets. Excuse me, that should be 10 there. And minus 12x plus 3 all over 6 equals minus a half. Going next, that's going to give me minus 8x plus 13 over 6 equals minus a half. So we've successfully reduced down our fraction, simplified our fraction into 1. Now our next step from here would be to eliminate the denominator of my fraction. And how we're going to do that is multiply by 6 on both sides. On the left-hand side, that's going to have the result of removing the denominator. On the right-hand side, we're just going to do that multiplication. 6 by minus a half gives me a negative 3. Now it's just a matter of solving the resulting equation. I'm going to bring the minus 13 to the other side. So that's going to be minus 16. Divide by minus 8, and that's going to give me an answer of 2. Okay, so we can see how we're following that same method. We're reducing the fraction in the same way. We're finding that common denominator. We're using that to kind of end a resulting equation. Okay, so I did say there's another method that we're going to do. I think I'll do that. I'll do this in a separate video to keep the two videos kind of shorter. So second video now on solving equations with fractions is going to be solving them by eliminating the fractions in the first place. Okay, a slightly different method, but essentially a much more straightforward, nearly and quicker method.